Welcome back in. We have Erik Teague, head football coach at Reidsville High School. Little program in Rockingham County, a little known football program they have there. Coach Teague, obviously, interesting offseason. You coming off a season where you were kind of knocked out a lot earlier than probably you thought you'd be. The community thought, everybody thought. East Rutherford came up and won in a 1 point game. How's that kind of bled into the offseason here? And do you sense the kids are, really kind of focused on kind of rewriting the ship there?
Yeah, I think our senior class has kind of been a big goal of theirs is to kind of get back to, making a deep run in the playoffs, coming off of a state championship their sophomore year. Sometimes obviously winning it can be a blessing and it's great to win, but sometimes it can be a curse in that you think that it's just always going to happen and you might not necessarily have to work as hard for it. So I think our guys have been working as hard as I've seen in recent years in the off season in the weight room. And then that kind of led into our spring practice that we just finished up with last week. So the hunger is kind of back. They don't want their season to end the same way that it did last year. So they're working hard, trying to get ready for the season.
Yeah, I got in the sense that things are a little bit more locked in this offseason than last offseason. Last offseason is kind of I guess a crazy offseason for you guys. It's a little bit different last year. So let's get into these seniors. So obviously, everyone knows about Deontay and Kendra. They've already won a state championship. They've already been to another one. They've won multiple in basketball now. But this is the last chance they have at doing it. What do you see out of those two guys in terms of kind of their tenacity and just because for someone that's accomplished so much, they still have the time's kind of limited now. Is what I'm saying. So do you see kind of an extra tenacity or just kind of an extra kind of a gear for them this offseason?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I actually have both of them in one of my math classes. So, we kind of talk about it here and there randomly throughout the day. But
how are they at math? Are they good at math?
Yeah, we got exams coming up. So they've
okay.
They're
you
both,
guys got to study. You got to study if you're listening. Study for your exam.
They're both in my honors math 3 class. So they're doing pretty good. But yeah, well, all the things that they have accomplished, one of the things that they haven't done before has been our senior leader in that group. So we're kind of interested to see. That's one thing that we put a lot of pressure on is our seniors and them kind of leading our team where we're going to go. So they have accomplished a lot. They have a lot of stats, a lot of college offers, all those types of things. But then them actually being the leaders, which they've led at being as talented as they are, but we do put a little bit more emphasis in our seniors. So them having the opportunity to be those senior leaders, I think is going to be big for us this year. It kind of starts with them. They're the two names at the top that everybody knows. And then, so we're expecting a lot out of them this year.
So everyone knows what we're getting at. Kendra, he's going to be just a ridiculous, freak target over the middle of the field, especially up the seams. Everyone knows what Kendra is going to be about. But Deontay, last year he played quarterback, and he did a pretty good job at it. But there's kind of this year, there seems to be some optionality of what he can do. You have a young quarterback coming up named Braxton Johnson, who was a freshman last year, who's looked pretty good in the spring. Just kind of walk us through that quarterback spot. In an ideal world, would you rather play them both or rather have one and have, Deontay back at receiver where he was very good? Just where are you at, today in May on that position?
Yeah, for us, we're always about our best players having an opportunity to touch the ball. So obviously the quarterback gets to touch the ball the most, but we can be a little bit more flexible with being able to move Deontay around. Last year, teams could kind of game plan a little bit, just trying to keep him in the pocket or not let him outside the pocket or those types of things. So at the very least, we're going to have some type of package where he's back there just seeing how good he was at it last year, but then also seeing the development of Braxton Johnson, like you mentioned, one year older, being a sophomore. It's really tough for any freshman to come in and play quarterback at the varsity level. So just being 1 year bigger, faster, stronger, having the playbook, not having to learn the whole playbook like he was having to last year. So we're going to kind of use this summer that we started in the spring and then this summer to kind of see where his development is at and see how he competes in 7-on-7s and performs and things like that to see how big of a role he can have. But yeah, it would definitely help us out a lot offensively if we can move Deontay around and not have him stuck back there at quarterback every snap.
Yeah, and I think the defensive coordinators would be extra terrified if they had to deal with Deontay again with already having to deal with Kendre. So that's probably a big impetus behind that as well. But we'll see how he does throughout the summer, rest of spring and summer here. So interesting to see how he does. Elsewhere in the offense, so backfield wise, Jariel Cobb was an outstanding player for you out of the backfield. He ended up getting hurt there at the end of the season. What are we looking at in terms of the running backs this year?
Yeah, so last year he was pretty much our workhorse that had probably like 90% of the carries other than Deontay running the ball whenever he ran it at quarterback. So at running back, we have a senior who also got hurt and kind of around that same time. He was our next back end. So really we lost two at the same time last year is Michael Smith. He'll be a senior this year. He didn't have a ton of carries, but he played a lot and was kind of mainly our blocking back, A back is what we call him, out of the backfield. But he's the next guy up. And then we have some young guys. The kid who was a freshman last year, he got a lot of carries in the playoffs, Keyshawn Henry, who's going to be a really good back for us. But again, he's just young, so he's still learning. And then another freshman is kind of on the same level as him. That's, again, going to be a good back. They're both going to be varsity players, just kind of sharing the backfield. Right now is Josiah Samalu, call him JoJo. They're both really talented sophomores, but just still learning, still working in the weight room to get strong enough to carry that load on the varsity level. And then another guy that played running back that plays linebacker too, is Savion Johnson. So he got some carries last year. And then we have some other kind of blocking back we call A-backs. And then another junior who's worked really hard in the weight room is Devontae Campbell. He's a bigger guy, plays like nose 3 technique for us, but then he also plays running back, so he's a load to get down when he gets.
Yeah, not fun to tackle him.
Yeah.
How about the other skill guys? So obviously Kendre is just going to be a magnetic force at tight end. Any other receivers or tight ends you're looking at this year?
Yeah, so one guy who had a breakout year on the defensive side last year was Cadence Pruitt. He's a rising junior. He's got a couple offers already at defensive end, but plays tight end also. We play a lot of guys two-way at our level of football, so he'll give us the opportunity to go with some 2 tight end sets. So him and Kendre are very similar in size, and Cadence is a very strong kid, been working really hard in the weight room. So having those guys on the field at the same time is going to be a threat, just working with those type of packages. And then another receiver who's a senior, got a lot of playing time last year, is wore number 3, Frankie Galloway. So he played a lot of receiver last year, and then he'll play a lot of corner also, so he'll be on the field a lot. And then there was 2 guys really we lost before the season even started last year to injury that we're hoping have big comeback years this year. Richard Braithwaite is a rising junior. He was going to be probably a varsity starter last year as a sophomore, but he had an ankle injury the day before our first scrimmage, so he was out. He finally started being able to run and move around pretty good, kind of right there towards the end of the season, so never really got any playing time. And then another DB receiver, Jordan Robinson, we lost to a knee injury right before, it was in June or July last year. So he's back to almost full recovery. Again, was a sophomore last year that we were expecting to be a varsity starter. So hoping those guys have big comeback years this year. And then another junior, Demarion Whittet, got a lot of playing time last year as a sophomore on varsity. So all 3 of those guys are rising juniors, so we're expecting to have pretty big impacts on our offense.
So it sounds like, as per usual, there's a lot of weapons that you'll have to play with there. at receiver.
Yeah, that crew, what their freshman year they played on JV. We had a really good JV team, and we were kind of excited for what we had coming up from JV
Gotcha.
last year, and then, like I said, two of them we ended up losing before the season even started. So we're kind of excited to see. Hopefully, keep them healthy this year.
So, offensive line wise, I think this is one spot where there's not as many guys back from last year. I think you want one starter back. Let's kind of go through that whole group and what you're expecting out of them and how you're going to get them ready for August.
Yeah. So last year, in this kind of preseason interview, we were excited about our depth on the offensive line. We had a lot of guys coming back. So then now this year we've lost a lot of those guys, but we're still excited about the younger guys we got coming up. Just the one starter, I believe, is Jaquez Tons. He'll be on both sides, offense and defensive line. He's a big kid, rising junior. So he's played varsity pretty much since his freshman year. So he's got a lot of experience, even though he's only a rising junior. Another big kid who played on JV last year, Jacoby Cannon. Again, he's a rising junior. So we got several of these guys for a couple of years. Looks like at center we have Christian Kelly, who his older brother played for us and went to Hampton and then just recently transferred to Elon. So he's got an older brother that's always working with him, but he's looking at center. And then right guard, we have a senior Chris Cobb, and then we got a rising sophomore Tyson Albright, who is, again, a bigger kid. So size-wise, we don't have a ton of experience, but size-wise, we got some bigger kids than we're used to having on the offensive line. And then another rising senior, Jaden Slade, got a lot of really more playing time as a sophomore, and then still kind of the same amount of playing time last year. But then we're really expecting him to be a leader as a senior this year. So those are the main guys. Trey Slade is another guy. He'll be a rising junior. So a lot of these guys they were 8-quarter guys, or we moved up for playoffs type of thing. So we were losing a lot on the line, but then we were still excited about the guys we had coming back.
Gotcha. So flipping over to defense, I think that side of the ball in general, there's more starters back that side of the ball. Up front, we already mentioned most of these guys. So Kendre is going to play some defensive end. Cadis Pruitt really broke out at defensive end last year. I think Tynes is also a defensive lineman. That whole front group, tell me about them.
Yeah, they had a lot of experience. That's one of our off-season focus points has been how we play on the defense. We were, as a staff and as the players, we were kind of disappointed in how we played defensively. We always say, we've never had a state championship caliber team without a great defense. So we're trying to focus in a little bit more on that this year. Just techniques, tackling, all the little small detail things is what we've been focusing on throughout the offseason and the spring. And then we got to be able to be tough and physical when the other team wants to run the ball at us. So those are things we're definitely going to be focusing on. So that starts up front. The guys you mentioned, Cadence, Kendre, Tynes, those guys can be dominant when they want to up front. And then you throw in some other guys. I mentioned Devontae Campbell earlier. He's a bigger kid, just kind of got a little explosiveness to him. He's been working hard in the weight room. And then, like I said earlier, we play a lot of guys both ways. So a lot of these guys are similar. But Trey Slade, Jaden Slade, Jacoby Cannon, and Tyson Albright are all guys that are going to be working in both ways, offense and defensive line.
That's the fun part of 2A football. I guess 4A football now is the names are tend to go same names on both sides, so it's easier for me, the reporter, to keep track of. How about linebacker? I mentioned a couple of these guys, like we said. Tell me about that group.
Yeah, so a lot of these guys are kind of like our running back group. We have some guys that are more defensive focused, at least at linebacker. We have rising senior Keontae Brunson and Savion Johnson. They played a lot of linebacker last year, and last year they didn't have a lot of experience. Last year they were trying to replace Aiden and Paul, and there was kind of like a hole there for a little while. But they've been working really hard to fill that hole once again. So last year they got a lot of playing time as juniors, and we're hoping that translates over to having a really good senior year. Another rising junior got a lot of playing time last year as a sophomore, Zaylen Hampton. And then you got Michael Smith, who I mentioned at running back. He was playing our best linebacker right at the end of the year, and then he hurt his ankle to kind of going into the playoffs. So we missed him in the playoffs. And then outside linebacker, I mentioned Josiah Samalou earlier at running back. He's a rising sophomore. And then O'Darian Carter and Israel Mosqueda are rising junior and senior, have been working hard at outside linebacker.
Gotcha. As far as the DBs go, Deontay, when he's back there, how often is he playing back there? Is he still playing most of the snaps there?
Yeah, the playing quarterback, we weren't really sure how much rest he was going to need starting off the season. And then as we got going, he was pretty much out there every
and when he's back there, you're hard pressed to find another safety that's as good as him. I think when he was a freshman, he had 12 interceptions, like out of the box or something crazy like that. So we'll start with him. What does he allow you to do with his presence and his range back there at safety?
Yeah, I mean, he's as good as we've had. I mean, he started as a freshman. He had a more impactful freshman year on defense, obviously with 12 interceptions, and then he kind of picked up the offensive side later on in his freshman year and kind of got more comfortable on that side. But yeah, he's just a really smart kid, really good athlete, has good hands, ball skills. All that translates to the DB position. So we tried to match him up with other teams' best receiver most of the time, but then we also have played around with a couple of different things, which try not to isolate them on one side of the field so that the other team can completely avoid them. But we have some other DBs that will hopefully kind of even that out some too.
Who are some of the other DBs back there that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah. So I mentioned Frankie Galloway played a lot of DB last year. Rising senior LaDon Hatfield was on the 4x1 track team with Deontay that they qualified for states, and Demarion Whitted, who I mentioned earlier, and then Richard Braithwaite, I mentioned earlier, played a lot of safety, and then Derek Lyons is another rising junior who's just really good athlete. A lot of those guys are track guys, and so they're around each other a lot in the spring, just doing that type of stuff.
Awesome. We'll end it out here with the specialists: kicker, punter, long snapper, returner. We have guys looking at here.
Yeah, punter will be. I just mentioned at safety, Derek Lyons. At our level, we typically don't have too many guys who just specialize in kicking areas, and then so Derek is a good athlete. He's got a good leg on him. He kicked off for us some on JV and a handful of times last year on varsity. And then our long snapper is Cadence Pruitt. He'll probably be our short snapper also, I would imagine. And then we lost our kicker who did our extra points, field goals. Most of our kickoff last year was Grady Barrett. He was a senior. So we have Charlie Waters is a rising sophomore. He was our kicker on JV. Landon Evitt was another JV kicker that we had. He's got a good leg. And then we're trying to recruit some guys off the soccer team. So we'll see how that.
There you go. That's always a good place to go.
We'll see how that plays out kind of this summer and as we get closer to August.
Yeah, makes sense. Any changes to the coaching staff this year, or is it all the same guys we're used to?
Yeah, pretty much all the same. Coordinators, things like that are all the same. Doug Morris on the defensive side. Justin Jackson is my JV head coach. We coach, all of our coaches coach JV and varsity, but we kind of say one guy is the JV head coach, so they're kind of in charge on Thursdays. Mm-hmm. And then I technically still call the plays, but being really collaborative with my dad, who works with the offensive line, and then Titus Jones works with our quarterbacks, and then Justin Jackson works with our tight ends, receivers. So kind of spreading out their responsibilities as far as game planning was, and then I actually am still the one calling it on Friday nights.
So Jimmy still got some of his input in there. He's still calling some of the shots.
Yeah, he is probably call him our run game coordinator. I'll give him that title.
Okay, that's a good title. How about defense? Who are the other guys on that side of the ball coaching?
Yeah, so one coach we did lose was one of our defensive line coaches, Coach Erik Greer. He moved over to Moorhead with their new head coaching hire.
Okay.
So
Yep.
He had the opportunity to go from position coach to defensive coordinator over there. So we're happy for him, able to kind of move up the chain a little bit. But other than that, my dad will still be working with the defensive line.
Okay.
And we have a pair of brothers, Kwame Graves and Quan Graves. Kwame works with our defensive line, and then Quan Graves works with our DBs. I'm actually going to work with our safeties a little bit. So I'm trying to, coming from an offensive background, just trying to work with the defensive side a little bit more as I've gained experience as a head coach, trying to have more input on both sides. And then Coach Mars works with our linebackers, and Coach Seth Jeffries works with our linebackers.
Good. Awesome. What do you have going on in non-conference this year?
Yeah, so weren't really sure how the playoff qualifications and all that stuff was going to work when we –
No one did. No one knew.
When we started reaching out to teams. So we scheduled probably the most difficult non-conference schedule that we've had in a while, starting off with Northern Guilford, who, regardless of wins or losses, they're just a bigger school. So all these schools are bigger than us. So that's always a challenge, especially early in the season when you're dealing with getting players up to game speed and being fatigued and being hot.
Yep.
And guys going both ways. That's always a challenge when you're playing a bigger school who has guys that are not going both ways. So
right.
They got a lot of guys coming back. They got a really good quarterback. And they got, they're just a good team, just especially to start off with game one. And then we play GW Danville in Virginia, who's just 30 minutes up the road. So it's always, we've played them historically. We've played them several times. So it's a really good matchup. For us, they have – I'm not sure how Virginia does their classifications. I think they're still out of 4. I think they're either 2 or 3 out of 4. But they have more students than we have.
Okay.
A bigger school and with a lot of pride and tradition. Several Power 5 type of guys always coming out of their program. And then we go to Reagan in Winston. It's, again, bigger program, very well coached. And – you don't want to look at their record. And last year, I think we're somewhere around 500, but they got pretty much
so many injuries. Yeah.
I think quarterback got injured, and then some other stuff happened, but they pretty much have everybody coming back, which is always dangerous in football. So they're going to be really good. And then we end non-conference with Eastern Guilford, who their coach Tim Baggermary. We've scrimmaged them the past couple of years. We've known each other for several years, so they're going to be very well coached. They always have athletes that part of Guilford County, so they've typically do a really good job. So it's not any real slouches in the non-conference schedule this year.
Yeah, and then of course in conference play, you have some of the teams you're used to. Then you're also putting Rockham in that conference as well. Of course, Rockham is a much bigger school not much bigger, but they are bigger than Reidsville. So it'll be an interesting year in this new mid-state 3A, 4A, 5A conference. What's your general take on this league before we go?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Assuming for the first time ever, all the county schools are in the same conference. I'm not sure back when Reidsville was bigger, if we were all in the same conference.
Do you know who would know the answer to that?
I could probably ask my dad. But as far as I can remember, I don't think we have been. And then having Walkertown, who we've gotten familiar with over the past couple of years, they're very well coached. Forsyth County never really know what's going to happen. They always have good athletes in that part of the county. And then we've never played Carver, at least as long as I can remember. So
yeah,
got a lot of new faces on the schedule that we kind of have to prepare for.
Yeah, it's always fun when you're playing a team that you never played before, because you have to get up to speed on all their film so far that season and see what they do. And yeah, it'll be an interesting little challenge for you. So.
Yeah, when I was talking to somebody about the schedule the other day, it was like I think 6 of the 10 games or teams we didn't play last year, so it's a lot of newness.
Lots of work for you. Lots of film for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on today, taking some time out of your, I guess, post-school day here to tell me about your team and your players and your staff and your schedule. Looking forward to the season. It'll just be Friday night before we know it. It'll be here, and enjoy it. Enjoy it this last year with this special senior class, and best of luck rest of the off season here.
Appreciate it. We're looking forward to the 2025 season. Like I said, it'll be here before you know it.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.